The inheritance ceremony banquet hall was brightly lit. All of the Shin family's senior relatives were present. I stood at the back of the crowd, my fingers gripping my suit cuffs slightly. 3 years ago, Shin Jinhong and Su Wanrong kicked me and Shin Wuyang out of the house together. They laid down a harsh rule: whoever built a stronger career would get the position of Shin family heir. For that promise, I went south alone, without taking a single cent from the family. I spent countless late nights at drinking parties, toasting with investors round after round. My stomach was burned again and again by hard liquor. I barely made it through and built a fortune worth hundreds of millions. I was afraid that wealth would drive a wedge between us as blood relatives. So I deliberately lied to the public, saying my company had gone bankrupt. I came back to the Shin family looking like a complete failure. Deep down, I still held on to a sliver of hope. I hoped my parents would see how I had grown and still think of me as their real son. But this inheritance ceremony had its ending written from the start. Shin Jinhong's old rival suddenly stood up and laughed out loud. His voice cut through the entire hall. Shin Jinhong, if you're going to train an heir, why secretly fund one of them behind the scenes? How is that fair competition? The whole place went silent. Everyone's eyes turned to Shin Jinhong on the stage. I took half a step forward and said flatly, 3 years ago, our parents cut off all financial support for both of us brothers. They said we had to start from nothing. That rival's face showed complete shock. Then he laid out the truth in front of everyone. Cut off financial support? Last year, Shin Jinhong already transferred part of his shares and funded a northern resource company to fully back Shin Wuyang's business. Plenty of people in the circle know about this. When those words landed, the air seemed to freeze. I turned to look at my father. Shin Jinhong, who had been beaming with pride just moments ago, had his facial muscles stiffen instantly. After a brief, dead silence, he forced a smile, trying to brush it off lightly. Yenner, you are my biological son. No matter what, your situation won't be bad. Before he finished, Su Wanrong immediately stepped in and interrupted. Her tone carried a matter-of-fact indulgence. Muyang is an adopted child. He's always lacked a sense of security inside. We just wanted to give him a little more confidence. Shin Jinhong took over, his voice turning cold and hard. If Muyang used aggressive tactics to fight for the heir position, you shouldn't hold a grudge either. My chest felt heavy and tight. Scenes of those days and nights fighting to survive flashed through my mind one after another. I looked straight into Shin Jinhong's eyes. Uncle, is what he said true? Shin Jinhong let out a long breath, putting on an act like he was thinking about my welfare. We were just tempering your character. Once you're mature and steady enough, the resources will naturally come to you. I almost laughed in anger. The so-called fair competition had been tilted in favor of the adopted son from the very start. So from beginning to end, that fair competition was just a lie to pacify me? Anger kept rising inside me. 3 years of drifting in hardship, countless times on the brink of despair, and all along, my family had been secretly paving the way for Shin Wuyang. Shin Jinhong tried to step forward to calm me down. But Su Wanrong suddenly slammed her palm on the table in front of her. The sound was piercing. This company was built by my husband and me with our own hands. We'll give it to whoever we want. She looked me up and down, contempt clear in her eyes. In the past 3 years, what have you actually achieved? What makes you qualified to compare with Muyang? Shin Muyang quickly stepped forward, putting on a guilty and remorseful act, hanging his head. Mom, Dad, don't talk about my brother like that. It was me who didn't have the confidence when I started my business, so I confided in the family. It's all my fault. Su Wanrong immediately moved to shield him. She shot me a vicious glare. You don't need to apologize. Someone who can't even build a career has no right to be mentioned in the same breath as Muyang. Muyang's abilities are naturally above yours. Choosing him as heir is simply for the good of the Shin group. Shin Jinhong nodded in agreement. They could see every bit of effort Shin Muyang put in. But they couldn't see me in the south, drinking until my stomach bled. They couldn't see me vomiting on the floor just to win a single order. A huge wave of grievance and anger washed over me. I turned sideways and kicked a chair next to me. The chair only brushed against Shin Muyang's pant leg. It didn't actually hit him. But Shin Muyang screamed as if he had been badly hurt. He collapsed straight to the ground, curling his legs and crying out in pain. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have fought for the heir position. Brother, please don't hurt me anymore." The act was so over the top that even I was stunned. But Shin Jinhong and Su Wanrong didn't think twice. They rushed over to protect Shin Muyang on the floor. Shin Jinhong's face turned dark with anger, and he shouted at me. "Shin Yan! You've bullied Muyang since you were kids. It looks like we made the right choice in picking the heir." Su Wanrong crouched down to check his leg. There was only a faint scratch. She suddenly raised her head, her gaze icy cold as she stared at me. "If Muyang suffers even the slightest harm, you will never set foot in the Shin family home again." Watching them protect their adopted son without a second thought, the last bit of family feeling I had left turned to ashes. All these years, the parental approval I had been so desperate to earn had been nothing but an illusion from start to finish. I curled the corner of my mouth, my smile full of sadness. "Since that's how you feel, then we're done here. I don't care about the Shin family heir position. I don't care about the Shin group." With that, I didn't stay any longer. I turned and walked out of that private banquet hall. I didn't go far. I leaned against a pillar in the hallway, planning to catch my breath before leaving. The banquet hall door wasn't fully closed. The conversation inside came through clearly into my ears. That last sliver of hope I had was instantly shattered. It was Su Wanrong's voice. Her tone was cold, with no trace of motherly warmth. "Let him make a scene. If he holds a grudge against Muyang and dares to seek revenge, he'll only end up in more trouble." Then she said something that cut through all my confusion from the past 3 years like a dull knife. "I've already made arrangements. I secretly bribed quite a few of his investors and clients. I made sure everyone believes Shin Yan has no ability to turn things around. He's putting on a tough front now, but once his funds run out and he's desperate, he'll naturally come crawling back to beg us." My blood seemed to freeze in my veins. All the failures from the past suddenly connected in my mind. When I first started my business in the South, my proposals were flawless, but investors always found polite ways to say no. Deals that were already agreed on would fall through at the last minute when clients suddenly backed out. I used to think I wasn't good enough, that the market was just that brutal. But from the very beginning, it was my own mother pulling the strings behind my back. My eyes suddenly burned. Tears came up before I could stop them. If I hadn't changed direction in time and focused on expanding into overseas markets, avoiding the resources they had blocked domestically, I would probably be drowning in debt right now. The memories of those late-night drinking sessions and my damaged stomach lining came flooding back. My old stomach injury suddenly flared up. Sharp pain twisted inside me. I pressed my hand hard against my abdomen, cold sweat beading on my forehead. Just then, the wail of an ambulance siren came from outside the building. Several medics rushed in with a stretcher. I instinctively moved half a step forward, about to ask for help. But they completely ignored me. They didn't stop for a second and headed straight for the banquet hall. Their target was only one person, Shin Muyang. A moment later, Shin Muyang was carried out on a stretcher. As he passed by me, one of the medics noticed my pale face and my hands pressing hard on my stomach, my body trembling slightly from the pain. Sir, you look like you're in really bad shape. Before he could finish, Su Wanrong rushed over and cut him off. Her tone was aggressive and overbearing. Treat Myung first. Don't worry about anyone else. If his treatment is delayed, I'll file a complaint directly with your unit. Shin Jin-hong followed close behind. He glanced at me, his voice dripping with contempt. Don't bother with him. He lost the inheritance and can't handle it, so he's faking being sick to get sympathy. He's been pulling this act since he was a kid. The medics looked at me with disgust. They didn't ask about my condition again and quickly loaded Shin Muyang into the ambulance. As the doors closed, Shin Muyang on the stretcher looked at me through the crowd. The corner of his mouth curled into a smug, barely noticeable smile. The pain kept getting worse. I could barely stand. People passed by in a hurry, and no one wanted to spare me a second glance. Luckily, a stranger passing by saw me swaying and called another ambulance for me. When I got to the hospital and finished the checkup, the doctor told me seriously that if I had come any later, my stomach would have perforated a second time. After 4 treatment, the pains slowly faded. I lay in the hospital bed to rest. Bored, I opened social media. I immediately saw a new post from Shin Muyang. In the picture, Shin Jin-hong was signing the inheritance agreement. Su Wanrong sat beside him, spoon-feeding him nutritious soup. The caption read, "Thank you, Mom and Dad, for always giving me the best." I stared at the screen. It was absurd. For so long, I had worked hard to expand my business. My intention was to avoid having the family tear each other apart over money one day. I always held on to a hope deep inside. I hoped that one day, my parents would see my efforts and be proud of me. But after everything today, I finally woke up. That hope had been self-deception from start to finish. Fragments of childhood memories came flooding back. Whenever Shin Muyang wanted something, my parents would force me to give it up. Whenever Shin Muyang complained, they never asked questions. I was always the one in the wrong. In their minds, I was always the stubborn, lazy, and ungrateful son. My phone buzzed with a work message from my subordinate. It said the Shin Group was rumored to have serious tax violations and needed 20 million in short-term funds to survive. I swiped across the screen and replied calmly. No need to transfer funds. Put everything into the new project. The Shin family heir has already been chosen. I no longer have any responsibility for the Shin Group. In the past, I cared about blood ties and bailed them out again and again. Now, that goodwill was completely used up. With nothing else to do, I decided to go to the Shin Group building one more time. In the early days of my business, I had a lot of high-quality overseas resources. Out of family loyalty, I quietly channeled millions of dollars worth of business to the Shin Group. I planned to keep it as a surprise and reveal it when the time was right. Now that the family bond was completely shattered, there was no reason to keep that goodwill. The Shin Group's finance and sales departments had separate responsibilities. Back then, everyone internally assumed those deals were won by the sales team. No one knew the source was me. I was going there to take back what was mine and get a clear picture of Shin Group's real financial situation. I walked into the office building. Before I even reached the finance department, Shin Muyang came straight at me. He was dressed in a sharp suit, showing none of the weakness he'd faked on the stretcher. The corner of his mouth held a mocking sneer. I knew you'd come back. Mom and Dad already figured you'd run out of options outside and eventually come crawling back to the Shin family. His tone was certain, as if my fate was already sealed. At that moment, the last thought I had of keeping up a civil brotherly act completely disappeared. I looked at him calmly. You put a lot of effort into getting that Shin family heir position. Shin Muyang chuckled softly and stepped closer. His eyes were full of barely hidden pride. What else could I do? Since we were kids, whether in school or anything else, you always beat me at everything. Without a few tricks, how could I ever compete with you? He seemed to drop all his masks. He no longer kept up that obedient, meek act. He casually dropped another bombshell. Father has already finalized it with the Wen family. In 2 days, when Jiyu and I are having our engagement banquet. Those words hit my chest like a block of ice. Wen Jiyu was the girl I had cared about since I was young. Plenty of people in our circle knew how I felt. Shin Muyang knew perfectly well, and he still took the engagement. He looked at my changed expression and smiled even more smugly. How does it feel, watching everything that was yours fall into my hands one by one? The anger I had held in for so long was instantly lit by those words. Even after all the humiliation at the inheritance ceremony, I still had a tiny hope that maybe one day things could ease up. But now I saw it clearly. He didn't just want the Shin family's power. He wanted to take everything that originally belonged to me. I stepped forward and grabbed his suit collar. Just then, footsteps came from downstairs. Shin Jinhong and Su Wanrong happened to walk up the stairs and saw the scene in front of them. Shin Yan! Let go! Su Wanrong shouted, rushing over. Shin Jinhong followed and pushed me hard, shoving me aside. He stood directly in front of Shin Muyang, his eyes sharp, like he was dealing with a troublemaking outsider. Muyang earned the heir position with his own ability. Shin Muyang immediately dropped his shoulders and lowered his head. He put on an act of being wrong but unwilling to make a fuss. Dad, Mom, don't blame my brother. He just can't accept me becoming the heir. He was always better than me, so the is hard on him. It's normal for him to feel upset. He even added softly, don't be too hard on him. After all, he's my older brother. That backhanded tactic made my stomach churn. Shin Jinhong looked at me with disappointment. I really wish you had even half of Muyang's tolerance. Su Wanrong glared at me coldly, her words sharp. If you could go just one day without scheming against Muyang, that would be progress. Reflect on yourself. If you keep this up, don't blame me for not recognizing you as my son. With that, she didn't even look at me again. She took Shin Muyang's arm, and they turned to leave. As they walked away, I clearly heard Su Wanrong gently comfort him, saying she'd bought him a kitten to cheer him up. Shin Jinhong gave me a long, heavy look, shook his head, and followed them. The three of them disappeared around the corner. The floor gradually quieted down as employees left for the day. I pushed down my swirling emotions and focused on the verification work. What I found was shocking. A year ago, Shin Muyang casually wanted a luxury yacht. His parents directly used company funds to buy it for him. Once the novelty wore off, he sold it. The transaction was covered up, leaving no public record. Digging deeper into the accounts, I found more and more instances of private use of company funds. The scale of tax evasion was far beyond what I had expected. 2 years ago, a friend had warned me that Shin Group's finances had huge holes and would eventually trigger a tax audit. Back then, I cared about family and helped them cover up the risks at great cost to myself. I shielded the Shin family from disaster. But now, I would never sacrifice my own interests for them again. Su Wanrong's eyes swept over the cheap hotel room. Her disgust was written all over her face. She looked me up and down, her tone condescending and mocking. Instead of staying in the big Shin family house, you hole up in a place like this. Who are you trying to punish? Without the family backing you, your so-called career is just a mirage. In her mind, I was still the failure who couldn't survive without the Shin family's protection. I couldn't be bothered to argue. I turned to walk around them. Shin Muyang quickly stepped forward and blocked my way. He wore a fake smile of generosity and kindness. Brother, there's no need to take things this far. I'm the one who convinced Mom and Dad to come find you. Tomorrow is my engagement banquet with you. I came specially to invite you." He paused, then offered what he called compensation, like he was doing me a favor. "Mom and Dad have also agreed to give you 1,000 shares of Shin family stock as a gesture of goodwill. Stop being so stubborn and come home." Shin Jinhong nodded beside him, looking quite pleased. "Muyang is unusually generous, willing to share the benefits. You should be grateful to have a brother who understands you like this." I looked calmly at the three of them in front of me. There was nothing left in my heart but indifference. 1,000 shares were nothing to me now. I have no interest in 1,000th of the Shin family's shares. I raised my hand to push Shin Muyang aside. Before my hand even touched him, he stumbled backward and fell to the ground. His palms scraped against the rough floor, leaving tiny cuts that beaded with blood. He had perfected this act. Su Wanrong exploded instantly, her voice rising sharply. "If it weren't for Muyang's engagement banquet tomorrow and the family's reputation, we wouldn't have come at all. Do you have to target him at every turn? You've been like this since you were little. Why should we keep giving you chances?" A wave of absurdity washed over me. I looked at them. "From when we were kids until now, have you ever once seen me bully him with your own eyes? Every time he complains, you convict me without asking any questions. 3 years of fair competition, and behind my back you kept paving the way for him. My struggles, my achievements, they mean nothing to you. And you call this family?" Before I finished, Su Wanrong had already raised her hand and swung it toward my face. This time, I didn't back down. I grabbed her wrist and gently pushed her away. I used just enough force to break free, not enough to hurt her. Everyone froze. Shin Muyang immediately rushed to steady Su Wanrong as she stumbled. His eyes quickly turned red, and he looked at me with a pained expression. "Brother, Mom raised you for so many years, and this is how you repay her? Apologize to Mom right now." Then he turned to Su Wanrong, pretending to defend me. "Mom, maybe brother just can't accept that the heir position went to me. After all, I'm just the adopted son. He should have been the one to sit in that position. You don't need to speak for him." Su Wanrong cut him off sharply, her gaze icy cold. "He's nothing but an ungrateful snake." Then she said the words that completely crushed the last bit of mother-son bond one had left. "If I had known you'd turn out like this, I would have left you out in the cold to die rather than raise you." Shin Jinhong's face darkened, and he stepped forward. "Shin Yan, what you did today was too much. Laying your hands on your mother, you must apologize." He paused, then laid down a condition. "Attend Muyang's engagement banquet tomorrow, bring a gift, and apologize publicly. Then this matter is closed." I lowered my head. The emotions in my chest had nowhere to go. I couldn't help it, I started laughing. The laughter grew louder until my body shook. What a loving, harmonious family. Shin Jinhong mistakenly thought I was giving in. He nodded slowly. "You're part of the Shin family. As long as you're willing to bow your head, everything can go back to how it was." I stopped laughing. I took a deep breath and forced myself to calm down. I looked up at them, my voice steady. "Fine. I'll be there tomorrow." Shin Jinhong's face showed relief. Su Wanrong was helped into the car by Shin Muyang. The family drove off together. Wen Jingning's office was simply decorated, without any unnecessary frills. He was Wen Jiyu's father, and he handled things carefully and shrewdly. When it came to his children's marriages, he never took anything lightly. When I walked in, he was looking through documents. He looked up and saw me, a hint of surprise crossing his brow. The version going around in the business circle was that I had failed and come back in disgrace. "Shin Yan? I didn't expect you to come directly to me." I pulled out a chair and sat down. Without beating around the bush, I placed the USB drive I had brought on the desk. Uncle Wen, I came to talk to you about the engagement between Shin Muyang and Jiyu. When Jingming tapped his fingers on the desk, his expression neutral. The engagement has already been finalized between our families. The invitations have all been sent out. The banquet is tomorrow. What's there to discuss? This engagement cannot happen. The moment I said that, the air in the office turned heavy. When Jingming's eyes grew cold. Xingyan, this isn't a child's tantrum. The marriage between the Shin and Wen families was a decision made after careful consideration on both sides. I pushed the USB drive toward him. There are two things on this drive. One is the complete records of Shin Muyang's business using secretly injected funds from the Shin family. The so-called starting from nothing is all lies. The other is the complete accounting records of the Shin Group's embezzlement and tax evasion over the past 2 years. When Jingming's expression changed immediately. He didn't reach for the drive right away. His gaze was fixed on me. Do you know what you're saying? Fabricating evidence like this could destroy the relationship between our two families. I am Shin Jinhong's biological son. I pulled these accounts myself from inside the Shin Group. My voice was steady, each word clear. All of Shin Muyang's business achievements are built on nothing. The Shin Group has massive internal financial holes right now and desperately needs Wen family capital to fill them. Once this marriage goes through, the Wen family will be forced to bear the Shin family's risks. I added one more thing. Jiyu shouldn't be kept in the dark and married off to someone who uses schemes to seize power and takes everything from others. When Jingming was silent for a long time. Finally, he picked up the drive and plugged it into his computer. One by one, the records appeared on the screen. His face gradually darkened. Years of business instincts let him clearly see the hidden dangers behind every transaction. After a long while, he closed the laptop and let out a deep breath. I need to discuss this with you. Tomorrow at the engagement banquet, the truth will be laid out in front of everyone. I stood up. I won't make a scene on my own, but I won't let the Shin family trap the Wen family through deception any longer. Leaving the Wen Group building, the night was already deep. I went back to the hotel and called my subordinates, giving a series of orders. Pull back all the overseas business resources I had channeled to the Shin Group. At the same time, arrange for the legal team to organize all the evidence and prepare to submit it to the tax authorities at any time. Revenge wasn't about one impulsive act. It was about systematically stripping away the foundations the Shin family relied on. The next day, the engagement banquet hotel was packed with guests. Most of the business figures in the city were there. Fine clothes and glittering lights filled the scene. The Shin family was beaming. Shin Jinhong and Su Wanring stood at the entrance greeting guests. Shin Muyang wore a custom-made suit and stood beside them, calmly accepting everyone's congratulations. I showed up as promised, in a well-tailored suit. I wasn't in my previous disguise of poverty anymore. When he saw me, Shin Jinhong's brow furrowed deeply. Su Wanrong's face instantly soured. Shin Muyang walked quickly to my side and lowered his voice in warning. At least you know enough to come. Remember what we agreed, stay quiet and don't say anything stupid. I glanced at him coolly and said nothing. On the main stage of the banquet hall, the MC stepped forward to begin the engagement ceremony. The lights focused, and everyone's eyes turned to the stage, waiting for Wen Jiyu to appear. But after a long wait, Wen Jiyu never showed up. Whispers began to spread through the crowd. The smile on Shin Jinhong's face froze. He turned and signaled an assistant to check backstage. Just then, instead of the prepared engagement promotional video, the big screen displayed a series of financial transactions and records of using company money for personal luxury items. They were clearly projected onto the huge screen. The whole crowd erupted. Shin Muyang's face went pale. He stood frozen in place. When Jingming walked slowly out from the side door and picked up the microphone, his voice carried clearly across the entire hall. I'm sorry to inform everyone that the engagement banquet between Shin Muyang and my daughter Wen Jiyu is hereby cancelled. The Wen family will never accept a marriage built on lies. That set off a wave of shock. The entire hall exploded in murmurs. Whispers swept through the banquet hall like a tide. Su Wanrong's face went pale. She tried to rush forward and grab the microphone, but when family bodyguards blocked her, Shin Jinhong was tense all over. He turned his head and glared at me, standing in the back of the crowd. His eyes were full of rage. He understood immediately. I had done all of this. Shin Muyang stood under the spotlight, bearing the scrutinizing stares of everyone in the room. The dignity he had maintained for so long was completely torn apart. This engagement banquet, which the Shin family had pinned their hopes on to solidify their status, had become a laughingstock in the city's business circles. When Jingming's office was on the top floor of the building, with the city skyline visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows. When I walked in, Wen Jiyu was also there. The father and daughter were reviewing the schedule for tomorrow's engagement banquet. When she saw me, Wen Jiyu clearly paused. We had known each other since we were young, and she knew about my history with the Shin family. She also knew how I felt about her. When Jingming put down the documents in his hand, his expression neutral. Xin Yan, what brings you here at this time? I didn't beat around the bush. I pulled out a chair and sat down. Uncle Wen, I came to ask you to cancel tomorrow's engagement banquet between Shin Muyang and Jiyu. The atmosphere in the office instantly tightened. When Jingming frowned, his tone carrying a hint of displeasure. Xin Yan, marriage is no small matter. Our two families have already reached an agreement. The invitations have all been sent out, and the guests in our circle have all been notified. It can't just be cancelled. The Shin family has already given their commitment. After Shin Muyang takes over the Shin group, the marriage will benefit both sides. Take over the Shin group? I looked up and projected my phone screen onto the wall. Financial documents and transfer records appeared one after another. What you're seeing is just the fake image the Shin family carefully crafted. The flow of funds was clearly shown, Shin Jinhong's private transfers to support Shin Muyang's business, the Shin group using company money to buy yachts and luxury items, and the risk warnings from tax authorities. All of it was laid out in front of them. Shin Muyang's so-called business success comes mostly from the Shin family funneling money to him. He didn't earn it himself. The Shin group has huge internal accounting holes, and the tax evasion problem is already a ticking bomb. Once it blows, the company will face a major hit. If you marry your daughter into that, you're dragging the Wen family into a crisis that could explode at any moment. When Jingming's face slowly darkened, he leaned forward slightly, staring intently at the evidence projected on the wall. He had spent half his life in business, and could tell at a glance what these materials meant. When Jiyu stood off to the side, her face pale. She had only ever heard Shin Muyang's public image as an ambitious entrepreneur. She had no idea about any of this. One more thing. I looked at Wen Jingning, my voice lowering. Shin Muyang knew perfectly well that I had feelings for Jiyu, yet he deliberately pursued this marriage. What he wants isn't Jiyu, it's the resources and power the Wen family brings. Wen Jingming tapped his fingers on the desk and was silent for a long time. Are these materials reliable? Could they be something you fabricated out of personal grudges against your brother to hurt the Shin family? I can hand over all the original files to an accounting firm for third-party verification. My tone was firm. I also still have a portion of the overseas cooperation resources I originally channeled to the Shin group. If this marriage goes through, I will pull all of those resources back. The Shin group will lose a significant chunk of stable revenue. That was a real bargaining chip. When Jingming knew very well the value of those overseas channels. The office fell into a long silence. After a while, Wen Jingming let out a deep breath. I understand. This concerns Yu's entire life. I can't take that gamble. He turned to his daughter. Jiyu, what do you think? When Jiyu gripped the hem of her clothes tightly, her eyes clear. Dad, I don't want to marry someone who fakes his way through life and only cares about family interests. With that decided, Wen Jingming immediately called his assistant. His tone was calm and decisive. Inform everyone, tomorrow's engagement banquet between the Shen and Wen families is officially cancelled. Contact every guest who received an invitation and apologize. After hanging up, he turned back to me. Xinyan, thank you for bringing me the truth. If it weren't for you, the Wen family would have walked right into a huge trap. I felt no satisfaction. Only a chill remained in my heart. Destroying this marriage was just the first step. I was going to strip away everything that Shen Jinhong, Su Wanrong, and Shen Muyang had schemed to gain, layer by layer. Leaving the Wen Group building, the night was already late. I went back to the hotel and contacted my legal and financial teams. I gave them instructions. First, pull back all the overseas cooperation orders I had given to the Shen Group for free. Cut off all hidden resource supplies. Second, organize all the financial evidence and compile complete materials. Submit them to the tax audit department. After that, I closed my eyes. Tomorrow's engagement banquet would still go ahead as scheduled. But the dream Shen Muyang had built for himself was already broken before it even started. The next day at noon, the hotel banquet hall was lavishly decorated. Guests filled the venue. Prominent figures from all circles were present. Everyone was there to witness the powerful alliance between the Shen and Wen families. Shen Jinhong stood at the entrance in a formal suit, beaming as he greeted guests. Su Wanrong wore exquisite makeup. Shen Muyang was in his custom-made suit, full of energy, waiting for his fiancée to appear. I walked slowly into the banquet hall. Countless pairs of eyes turned to me. Shen Jinhong spotted me, furrowed his brow, and walked over quickly. He lowered his voice in warning. Who told you to come? Today is Muyang's big day. If you cause any trouble, I'll have security throw you out. You personally invited me yesterday. Why can't I be here? I replied flatly. Su Wanrong also came over, her sharp eyes sweeping over me. She lowered her voice. Stay quiet. Sit through the meal quietly, take your shares, and get out. Don't ruin Muyang's big event. Shen Muyang walked over too, still keeping up his gentle, generous act. He deliberately raised his voice so some of the nearby guests could hear. Brother, I know you're upset. Let's not bring up the past. Just consider today a nice family meal together. That performance painted him as the tolerant, generous younger brother. And me as the bitter biological brother who came just to stir up trouble. Several nearby gazes turned to me with a hint of judgment. Just then, at the entrance of the banquet hall, the Wen family still hadn't shown up. The scheduled time for the engagement ceremony came and went. The host on stage signaled several times, but still no Wen Jiyu. Restlessness started to spread through the room. The smile on Shen Jinhong's face slowly stiffened. He took out his phone and called Wen Jingning. The line was busy. He tried again and again, but couldn't get through. Shen Muyang's composure also cracked. His fingers clenched the cuff of his suit, panic showing on his face. What's going on? Why isn't the Wen family here yet? Su Wanrong's smile completely disappeared. She whispered to Shen Muyang, maybe they got delayed on the road. I'll send someone to check. The guests were whispering to each other. The murmurs grew louder. A big, carefully planned engagement banquet, with the bride's entire family absent, in their social circle, that was a public humiliation. Shin Jinhong suddenly turned to me. Suspicion flashed in his eyes. He strode over to me, his voice barely containing his anger. It was you. You went to see Wen Jingming, didn't you? What did you tell him? I didn't deny it. My voice was calm. I just told Uncle Wen the truth. A marriage built on lies and hidden risks. The Wen family has no reason to walk into that. Those words hit Shin Jinhong like a thunderclap. Shin Muyang's face went white. He stepped forward, his voice trembling. Brother, did you really have to go this far? What good does destroying my engagement do for you? Good? I looked him straight in the eye. When you blocked all my domestic channels behind my back, bribed my clients, and pushed me to the brink, did you ever think about this day? The career you bought with family money, the engagement you stole, none of it was ever really yours. Many of the guests had already caught on to the conversation. The noise grew louder. In the middle of the standoff, several tax officials in uniform walked straight through the banquet hall crowd. They showed their badges to Shin Jinhong. Mr. Shin Jinhong, we have received a verified complaint with evidence. The Shin Group is suspected of tax evasion and embezzlement of company funds. Please cooperate with us for an investigation. The entire room went dead silent. The clinking of champagne glasses stopped. Everyone stopped talking and stared at the three members of the Shin family. Su Wanrong trembled. She instinctively tried to step in front of Shin Jinhong. You must have the wrong people. Our Shin Group has always paid taxes legally. Who filed this malicious complaint against us? The accounting records are complete. Please cooperate with the investigation. The officials gave no further explanation. All the blood drained from Shin Jinhong's face. He looked terrible. His eyes shot toward me, filled with rage and disbelief. He finally realized, the Wen family's withdrawal, the investigators arriving, I had orchestrated all of it. Shin Yan! You actually dared to go after the Shin family? We are your biological parents! He shouted in a low, trembling voice. Shin Muyang could barely stand. The polished image he had worked so hard to maintain shattered completely. Panic was written all over his face. The heir position he had fought so desperately for was now hanging by a thread. The engagement banquet ended in chaos. A complete mess. The guests left quickly. Many were still whispering about the Shin family's scandal as they walked out. A week later, the railway reopened, but I didn't leave immediately. I wanted to watch this farce play out to the end, not run away. Not long after, Su Wanrong came to find me at my place. She had lost all her former arrogance. She looked haggard, her eyes red with bloodshot veins. When she walked in, she didn't speak harshly. She even poured me a glass of water. Yenner, I'm begging you. Withdraw the evidence. Give the overseas business back to the Shin Group. If you help, the Shin Group will still be yours. We'll give you the heir position. Her tone was humble. But the words were still about transactions. In her mind, all my revenge was just about wanting the Shin family's power. I didn't touch the water. Mom, it's too late. When you schemed to block my channels and use company money to support Shin Muyang, you should have known this day would come. I never wanted the Shin family inheritance. Su Wanrong's eyes turned red, her voice cracking. I know we did a lot of things wrong. But if Shin Jinhong is convicted, he'll go to prison. The Shin family's decades of work will be destroyed. That's your home. Home? I looked at her, my voice flat. The moment you bribed my clients behind my back and hoped I'd come crawling back to you with nothing, that home stopped existing. Just then, the door was shoved open. Shin Muyang burst in. His suit was wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot. The confident look from the engagement banquet was completely gone. Shin Yan, do you have to destroy us completely? His chest heaved. I admit I use tricks. But the Shin family is your blood too. Watching your parents suffer, can you live with that? Tricks. I repeated the word flatly. For 3 years I'd built my business from nothing. I drank until my stomach bled in the South. I nearly died more than once. You hid behind your parents, using their money to pave your way. Now you're here because of the choices you made. Shin Muyang lunged forward, losing control. All because of Wenjiu? Because of the heir position? You're going to destroy the entire Shin family for that? It's not about the woman. It's not about the position. I looked him in the eye. It's about you trampling on fairness again and again. About you burning through the last scraps of family loyalty. I didn't set anyone up. I just gave the truth back to the system. Su Wanrong saw Shin Muyang getting emotional. She quickly pulled him back and turned to me, her tone softening again. Yenner, we're sorry. Name your terms. Money, conditions, whatever you want. Just please spare the Shin family. I don't want anything. Shin Muyang suddenly pulled away from Su Wanrong. His eyes were full of resentment. Fine. If you're that heartless, I'll leak everything to the public. I'll say you faked the accounts to frame the Shin family for power. Let's see how you survive in this circle. I watched his hysterical outburst without a flicker of emotion. I had already expected him to try this. Every single account has its original records. A third-party accounting firm has already verified them. If you spread those rumors, you'll just add a defamation charge to your list. Those words doused whatever fight was left in him. He stumbled back half a step, his shoulders sagging. Su Wanrong saw that neither soft nor hard tactics worked. All her pent-up emotions burst out. She turned back to her old bitter self. I see it now. You just want to watch the Shin family suffer. We raised you, and we got an ungrateful wolf in return. I remember your kindness in raising me. But that doesn't mean I have to accept your schemes and cruelty without end. Gratitude and guilt aren't the same thing. I pointed to the door. Please leave. Don't come looking for me again. Su Wanrong wanted to argue more. Shin Muyang held her back. His eyes were dull. He didn't press further. The mother and son walked out in silence. The door closed, and the room went quiet. Not long after, the tax department announced its findings. Shin Jinhong was found guilty of tax evasion and embezzlement of company funds. A formal lawsuit was filed. The Shin Group's cash flow completely collapsed. Unable to pay its debts, it went into bankruptcy liquidation. The business empire built over decades crumbled in an instant. When news of the bankruptcy spread, the friends and former associates who used to surround the Shin family scattered like birds. The once bustling Shin family mansion sat empty and silent. After Shin Jinhong was convicted and sent to prison, all family assets were seized. Houses and shares were all put up for auction. Su Wanrong went from a wealthy lady of leisure to having nothing. She had to rent a room in an old neighborhood and work odd jobs just to get by. Shin Muyang lost all his status. The social circles he used to move in shut him out completely. He had no real skills and no capital to start over. Everything he had taken for granted was gone. I didn't go out of my way to make their lives harder. But I wasn't going to help them either. My revenge was about tearing away their masks and making them face the consequences of what they did. Not about driving them into absolute ruin. About 2 months later, I got a call from the police station. Su Wanrong had had a breakdown. She had gone to my company and sat down in front of the entrance, refusing to leave. Security couldn't get her to move, so they called the police. I drove over to the company. The autumn wind was cold. Su Wanrong wore a thin old jacket. Her hair was messy. There was no trace of her former elegance. When she saw me, she rushed over and tried to grab my sleeve. I stepped to the side and avoided her. Xinyan, can you really bear to see us like this? Jinhong is in prison. We have nothing. What more do you want? Her voice was hoarse, her eyes red. Passing employees kept looking over. The people who made those choices weren't me. My voice was calm. Tax evasion and embezzlement were Shin Jinhong's choices. Sabotaging me and cutting off my resources was your decision. Fighting unfairly for position and taking the engagement was Shin Muyang's choice. Everyone has to face the consequences of what they did. But we're your family. Su Wanrong raised her voice, trying to guilt-trip me. Even if we made mistakes, we don't deserve to be ruined. You have so much money. You could spare a little to help us. Family isn't an excuse for endless sacrifice. I looked at her. I used to care about blood ties and cover for the Shin family's risks. In return, I got stabbed in the back. I've done more than enough. Shin Muyan showed up then. It looked like Su Wanrong had called him. He looked worn out. His clothes were faded. The gentle, polished act was completely gone. Brother, please. He lowered his head, his voice full of humiliation. Just give me a job. Nothing fancy, just enough to get by. I know I was wrong. I was greedy. I did whatever it took. It was the first time he had bowed his head and apologized in front of others. Many company employees had stopped to watch. They stood at a distance, witnessing the scene of a mother and son begging their own flesh and blood for charity. I looked at him evenly. You're not without ability. It's just that every opportunity you had was bought and paid for by your family. Now that the safety net is gone, you can do what anyone else does, find a regular job and make a living. I'm not giving you special treatment. Shin Muyang's head shot up. The resentment in his eyes reignited. Are you that resentful? Do you have to watch us suffer to feel satisfied? I don't feel satisfied. I spoke honestly. I don't get any pleasure from revenge. I just don't want to pay for your mistakes anymore. Su Wanrong saw that begging and pleading didn't work. She completely lost it. She started wailing right there, accusing me of being unfilial. More people stopped to stare. The police officer stepped in and told her to stop disrupting the company's normal operations. They warned that if she kept making a scene, they would have no choice but to take legal action. Su Wanrong shuddered. She didn't dare cause more trouble. She looked at me, her eyes filled with regret, resentment, and a hint of bitterness. In the end, she didn't say another word. She turned and stumbled away. Shin Muyang stood there, his fists clenched. After a moment of silence, he followed her. The crowd gradually dispersed. I stood still, the cold wind brushing past me. I had won this fight. I had destroyed the Shin family foundation they cared about so much. I had exposed all their lies and taken back the fairness they stole. But I felt no sense of triumph. Blood ties can't be cut, but the family bond had long been worn away by their own hands. Later, I heard through old contacts that Su Wanrong was working 2 steady part-time jobs. She visited Shin Jinhong in prison regularly. Shin Muyang got a basic job at a small company. Without his halo, he struggled at the bottom, living a tight and difficult life. They never came to find me again. I put all my focus back into my own career. My overseas business expanded steadily. I kept a normal friendship with Wen Jiu, not too close, not too distant. Those youthful feelings slowly faded with time and the storms that had passed. I stopped craving approval from my birth family. The pain I went through will always be there. But I don't have to stay stuck in it anymore. The harm they caused me finally came to an end.